If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friends Randy Nance and Jeff MD. They're backstage right now, and strong possibility that Khalid Muhammad, Agent 00711, will be joining us, hopefully, for the main subject of tonight's video, which is the rising global south, thanks to being propped up by none other than China and China's Belt and Road program. However, before we get into that, I've got a quick message to deliver to y'all with regards to atomic minerals, as you can see below. As you know, I'm not an investment guy. It's not in my wheelhouse, but I have a bunch of friends who are investment guys who brought to my attention Vizsla Copper, and a bunch of Guardians jumped in and bought Vizsla Copper at 3 cents a share, went over $1. Very, very happy that y'all made a very handsome return on that. So the same person who came to me with the information on that came to me with the information on atomic. So let me give you the Cliff Notes version here. We go through approximately 50 million pounds of uranium per year. We produce 1 million pounds, 2%. So we have a foreign dependency of 98%, and there's no good reason for that. We have massive stores of uranium in Colorado and Utah in particular, but also some other states. So earlier this year, the federal government used what's called Section 232 to tie uranium to energy production, to a Department of War issue, like a security issue, essentially, right? So that allows them to move money around quickly and easily. And what they do, they put $2.7 billion on the table and said, let's kickstart these uranium projects so that we can be self-sufficient. Well, Atomic, and you can see the logo right there, they have 4 projects in Colorado and Utah that they own 100% of. And just like the team that was at the copper company, these guys have a record of success. So they, one of their projects, they spooled it up and sold it in the blink of an eye for about $650 million. So essentially, here's what you have. You have this massive foreign dependence on uranium. You have the current administration saying that's no good. We need to be producing this stuff domestically. Then you have $2.7 billion earmarked for this. Then you have this company, Atomic Minerals, who has a track record of success, having 4 projects that they own outright. This is a really, really good time to take a look at this part of the market if you're into investments. Again, I'm not giving you investment advice. I'm not that guy. But when this stuff crosses my desk and it's a really good opportunity, I'm going to bring it to your attention. And I would say easily less than 10% of what crosses my desk, I actually bring it to you guys. So this one's a winner. There's a link down below. Check them out. In Canada, they trade under the symbol ATOM, and in America, they trade under the symbol ATMMF, atomicminerals.ca, or use the link down below. So with that being said, let's jump right into the conflicted question here. Good evening, gentlemen.
Gentlemen?
Evening.
Gentlemen?
I use the word loosely, of course,
Okay.
including myself. So anyway, we're going to knock out the conflicted question of the night first. If you're not familiar with it, conflictedthegame.com. These are 14 card decks set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Most, not all, but most of the questions have some element of morality, hence the name conflicted. Randy and I will answer this question for you at the end of the broadcast. Jeff has an important dinner meeting in less than an hour, so you won't get to hear his answer on this one tonight. But here we go. After the collapse of modern society, the government started a weapons confiscation program, apparently as a way to keep the peace. Do you think a disarmed population is more peaceful or more violent? Why?
My question is, wait, are they perpetrating the violence or are they the victims of the violence?
Well said. Well said. All right. So I got a piece of breaking news from this afternoon. And I know that Jake Lang is somewhat of a polarizing figure. I spoke to Jake a couple days ago, maybe 3 days ago now. And he's scheduled to come on SDN a week from tonight. And we're going to be discussing call it the resurrection of religious wars. So he was indicted this afternoon in Minneapolis because somebody made this ICE, whatever you want to call it, sculpture that says prosecute ICE. And Jake didn't really agree with it. So here's what he did.
President Trump, we support you. We support ICE. Our country was made for Americans, not for Somalis. Pro-ICE, baby. America first, America only. We'll see you here Saturday, 12 noon, outside the Minnesota State Capitol.
So you all may remember I put a link out earlier this week to help pay for security for Jake. And if anybody's interested in that, just let me know in the live chat and I'll post the link. So Jeff, I'll go to you first on this one. I mean, does that look like $6,000 worth of damage to you? Because that's apparently.
Well, it may be, but it doesn't matter. Remember when they put up in New York City all the little posters saying pray for, and that's all the hostages from the October 6th thing?
Yeah.
And all these people went and were ripping them down right and left all over the place?
Yeah.
How is this any different?
I don't think it is. You might want to pull your mic just a little bit closer to get some.
Well, the other question then is, did they have permission in writing from the state of Minnesota to put a political display on the Capitol grounds? And if so, why?
Yeah, good question. We'll see what happens. Again, as he mentioned, he's going to be protesting on Saturday, but he has security with him this time. We'll have him a week from tonight. Randy, what do you think of, again, he's a polarizing character, but God bless him. He loves the country and he does what he thinks right. What do you think of that?
Well, my first impression was, man, he's having to put in some work to kick those things over, huh? Got a little weight to him in that ice.
Right.
But I'm with Jeff. You know what I mean? Did they get a permit to put those out there? Because whether it's my HOA here, or you build something in your yard or out there in the city, just like that, you got to get a permit. Did they get a permit to put that ice out there? And then again, it's ice. There's no $6,000 out there. And if they spent $6,000 for those ice letters, somebody needs to look into that. Somebody needs to look into why they're getting $6,000 approved to put ice out there, then to post a slogan that's anti-law and law and order, right? It goes against what we actually believe. And then this is supposed to be the local government entity. Why would you put something out like that to begin with? And so all those questions should be answered. And, unfortunately, we're to the time, just like I said before, on some of these lawsuits that Trump and everybody up there has had to put forth, or going to court to stop the liberals from doing something that's already illegal. It's already illegal. And just like this, we shouldn't have to go this far to do that. But since they are, we have to. So somebody, even as small as this is, needs to be held accountable so that, the message goes out. You work for the government, whether it be the state or the federal government, you're not going to be an insurrectionist, or you get held accountable. You get to go to jail at the very least.
Well, they need to do is put a sign up that says we support ICE. wait for the anti-ICE people to come up and destroy it, and then say, we want them arrested. And if they refuse to arrest them, then we want Lang released, because that's selective prosecution.
Well, yeah, that's a great idea. Absolutely great idea. So I know Jeff and Randy remember this, but maybe some of y'all who haven't been with us for the past few years don't. There was an email in the Epstein dump that outlines a plan to initiate World War III during Super Bowl Sunday, actually. And I'll zoom in on this. So this was sent on July 17th, 2018 from James Haywood to Jeffrey Epstein. It says, we need to discuss World War III. The investors want to know if we are still planning February 8th, 2026. So 8 years in advance. I don't think there's too much in this video. Yeah, it's just infographic stuff.
Yeah.
So about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago, we did an episode specifically on this type of scenario, especially with drones. And it was kind of funny timing because we did it on a Monday or a Tuesday. We were called nutcases. We are doomsday preppers, suggesting that drones could be used to do things like drop aerosolized fentanyl, anthrax, whatever the case may be. Well, that Thursday, it was publicized, very publicized, because it was Thursday night football game in Cleveland, Ohio. Somebody flew a very expensive drone into the stadium. If I'm correct, if my memory is correct, it was like a $20,000 drone. Well, what the public didn't know at that point in time, because they didn't publish the numbers, but the NFL averages between 2,000 and 3,000 drone incursions per year amongst all of their open air stadiums. And then the following Monday on the government website, so sam.gov, supply and management, front page, they put an RFI out, request for information, and an RFP, request for proposal, on electronic means to take down drones that leave the drones relatively intact for intelligence purposes, don't blow them up kinetically. So that's 3.5 years ago. We started beating that drum, and they called us cuckoo. And here we are. Jeff, your thoughts on, these clowns speaking this far in advance? I mean, this is straight up evil, man.
Well, you got to understand that World War III to them might have been, okay, the nuclear option on the Epstein files. We're going to release all the information. If they try and prosecute me, I'm going to release all this information, and it's going to be scorched earth, and everybody who I've got dirt on is going to get burned to the ground. So it could be hyperbole. Why you would pick, the Super Bowl, if you're doing a real World War III, and I don't even know if that would be World War III unless it was China or Russia did it, but it'd be more likely, a 9/11 follow-on kind of thing.
Right.
But people make predictions all the time, and the only ones that get press are the ones that come true. The 99.999% that never come true, nobody pays attention to.
Yeah, true story. I don't mean to speak on Khalid's behalf, but he's not here yet. He has pointed out numerous times that he's very concerned about the Super Bowl. And if there was an attack during the Super Bowl, that wouldn't even represent 9/11 2.0. That would be a very large scale independent attack, separate from it, sort of thing. You couldn't pay me to go there, put it that way.
They're playing it in an open air stadium, so it makes it vulnerable to drone attacks, airplane. Someone gets in a freaking Cessna and flies it into the stadium. And they're probably going to have F-16s flying around above it the entire time. But if someone's willing to die in the process, they'll do it.
So I remember you threw some numbers out there, like ballpark rough numbers, Jeff, a few years ago, that let's say that they attacked the Super Bowl with drones and whatever, they were using for a payload. Let's just say it was aerosolized carfentanil, which is 50 times more powerful than the base analog. And you made a comment that, it's going to kill some people, but it's not going to kill everybody because it'll, spread out in the wind, blah, blah, blah. But you put a number out there, and I can't remember what it was, as far as how many people would get trampled.
Yeah, more people would die in the panic than would die in the attack. And if someone came in and spread anthrax, let's say, people wouldn't even know they were exposed to anthrax for probably 3 days. So there wouldn't necessarily be a huge panic. But if they did, a carfentanil or something like that, and you see the person 3 rows over going into seizures, people are going to freak out. They're going to panic. Or if they fly drones just with talcum powder, and they just fly them into the stands.
Wow!
And people see a drone come in, pow, and then they see a white powder go up. People are going to freak. They're going to go for the exits, and it's going to be like the Who concert in Cincinnati back in the 80s, where they heard a band warming up and they thought the concert was starting and they had been left out, and they rushed the gates. I don't know, was it 35, 40 people were crushed to death for a freaking rock concert. Now, can you imagine if you've got a stadium with 60, 70, 80,000 people in it, and they think someone's trying to kill them? No, it's going to be a disaster.
Wow.
And again, the panic is going to be worse than the attack.
Yeah, I forgot about that Who concert, but you're right. Yeah, it could be talcum powder. But as far as when we covered this 3.5 years ago, we discussed a few things, like you said, anthrax. And my understanding is, and you're the expert in this, is that once you start showing symptoms of anthrax poison, it's too late to save you. Is that correct?
Probably. Yeah, probably. You got to really jump on it. And we used to joke I know, black humor. We were in the black humor department. In the BW world, all BW agents start with flu-like symptoms. And so anytime someone come to work and they go, I think I've got the flu, or it could be anthrax, or it could be tularemia, or it could be, pick your poison. And the problem is, people, the government, health officials would have to detect very, very quickly that it was anthrax and get antibiotics out to everybody in the affected area. Because if you get it you inhale it, the best way to give someone anthrax is through inhalation. You get sporates, you grind it to the perfect particle size. I'm not going to say what that perfect size is. You spread it out, it gets into the lungs, and then they get what's called pulmonary anthrax. But that takes 2 or 3 days before it to really get going. But the problem is, when anthrax populates your body, you can kill it. That's not a problem. It's relatively easy to kill. You can use tetracycline, erythromycin. There's all sorts of antibiotics will kill. Penicillin kills it just fine. But when the bacterium dies, the little bug dies, it releases an endotoxin. And that endotoxin is what kills you. Actually, Streptococcus aureus is the same way. Strep endotoxin B is deadly as hell, and it's not technically biologic because it's not alive. It's a toxin that is released by the bacterium. And we used to joke that you may kill the anthrax, but it'll kill you back.
Wow. Yeah. Crazy, crazy stuff. I was just thinking to myself, the feds reported that 80% of the fentanyl seized in America last year had been laced with xylazine, which is a horse tranquilizer. So even if somebody has Narcan, that's not going to do anything for the xylazine. And that type of tranquilizer basically stops your heart, your lungs, all major functions. And there's no way to come back from being exposed to it. I'm curious if it can be aerosolized in conjunction with the fentanyl. That would just be freaking terrible. But
evil people can be very evil and very smart at the same time. Yeah. And we had a biological weapons program up until 1969 when Nixon ended it. And the reason we had one is because they had one. And then Nixon goes, I don't care who has it. This is just some creepy crap. We need to stop it. But the people and I used to know some, they were bioweapons designers for us back in the day, and they were analysts for the CIA when I knew them. because who knows more about biological weapons than the guy who actually designed them. But, and they were good people. To them, a bioweapon was no different than a gun or an atomic bomb or a gravity bomb. It was a way to kill the enemies of your country. And then when we signed treaties with them saying we're not going to do this anymore, they went, well, okay, yeah, it's probably a good thing, because the problem with a bioweapon, if it's one that can propagate itself, you have no control over it. Think about a chemical weapon. You hit an area, it doesn't really go beyond that area. But a bioweapon, if it can find a host, it can and will spread. And anthrax is not one that humans are not its natural host. Animals are. We have anthrax in the dirt everywhere in the United States. It's endemic here, but it's just not that common. But it gets in bison, it gets in cattle, it can get in deer. And once it does, it can spread, because how far can they go before it kills them? If it kills them, they may just be infectious, but it doesn't kill them. So that's the problem with biologics, is they're hard to contain.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm furiously trying to research in the background here, but Randy, I want to get your thoughts on a potential attack this coming Sunday at the Super Bowl.
Well, gosh, man, I forgot what I was going to say. No, actually, I do have one question for Jeff, because I got the anthrax shots. Does that stuff last for life, or is that just like for a couple of years?
It's unknown. So I'm old enough to have been vaccinated for smallpox. I've got a little pock mark on my shoulder, and my wife does too, which means I've been exposed to actually cowpox. Vaccinia is cowpox. But would my immune system remember that after 60 years? Yeah, who knows? But I'll tell you what, I'd rather risk it with an old vaccine than not any vaccine. So
Absolutely.
you get titers, your body puts antibodies out, and then they drop off over time. And when you're going to come up with immune globulin, like horse serums, they would inject a horse with killed rabies. They would build antibodies to rabies. And then when they're at their peak, they would plasmapherese the horse, which means they take all the blood cells out and just keep the plasma, because that's where the antibodies are. And then they put that on a shelf. And if somebody got exposed to rabies, they would give them the immune globulin. And those little antibodies for the horse will still kill the rabies in you. Well, those drop quickly. So you still have anthrax titer, levels, but they're probably really low.
Yeah, that's what
you can survive the first few days. Your body will remember, hey, I've seen this before. Let me start making antibodies.
Yeah, because that was in 03 and 04. That's when I got those.
Well, you're more likely to survive it than I am, because I never had it.
Well, as you mentioned a while ago, I was the cutoff. My sister has the same thing in her arm that you did. And of course, my parents and everybody else did. I was just born right after they stopped, but I did get it in the Army before we deployed.
Oh, you got a smallpox vaccine?
They gave it to everybody before we deployed to Iraq. Yeah.
Yours is more viable than mine then.
Yeah, I would say so. So, yeah. So as far as being an attack on this Sunday, I guess, putting it bluntly, if you are enemies and this was the time of year you were looking to do something, and certainly you needed to do something that, was a bang. And then, I don't know, you said it probably wouldn't be 9/11 2.0, but I don't know why it wouldn't be able to help kick that off.
Yeah.
Or at least while everybody's busy doing that, it would be a whole lot easier to attack some other cities. So I don't know. I think it's a possible
target.
Yes, it is a very attractive target. It's a huge event. Now, I'll go back to John Curry posted this question, and apparently this is a legitimate one now, right? What did the Simpsons show have to say about it?
Yeah, they're more accurate at predicting the future than Nostradamus.
Apparently they are. So I thought that was a great question. There was another one here, not really a question, but Deborah on X. She said something about, isn't it the Super Bowl being aired globally for the first time ever this year? I don't know if that's true. I thought it already was, but that would be an interesting question to know the actual answer to.
Super Bowl's always aired globally.
That's what I thought. It's a world. I mean, everybody.
They get more viewers than we have people in the United States.
Well, certainly now that they've turned off half the United States, they need some other viewers. But then going to the World War III thing, and I'm going to take a little different approach than Jeff did, and he had valid points. So you can't discount them or say, no, that's not it. But I'll go back to the rhetoric we heard, certainly once Ukraine kicked off, right? As I mentioned a week or two ago, it's the first time I've ever heard the media and some of our politicians talk about, well, we're just going to go into World War III. A nuclear war might be fixing to start. Like it was no big deal. Like, oh, it's okay. We're just going to have a nuclear war. When that has never have we seen that before on TV or in any capacity in this country. Some fool talk about World War III or a nuclear war like it's okay and it's fixing to happen. So I would say, and then we know that they planned out COVID in 2020 quite a few years before it happened. And in fact, they've been working on COVID, the virus, since 1999 or 2000. And so it didn't get released till 2019 and 2020. So when he talks about the investors want to know, I would take them for their word. And maybe they thought they were going to kick off a real World War III because, as Jeff mentioned, it would depend on who attacked us. If it was Russia or China, that automatically kicks it off. It won't matter. That's World War III. If it's Iran, it'd be questionable. But I think some other stuff would have to happen. But again, these people don't think clearly. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how educated they are. And I stopped calling them smart, as Jeff pointed out earlier, because it's diabolical, right? A fox is smart in a sly way, right? So we don't call that intelligence, even though it really is. That's diabolical. When you're thinking on those terms, you're a criminal. And there's nothing
you could be a smart criminal.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying it's a different verbiage. It's a different term.
You know,
but
Bernie
at the end of the day,
ripped off
millions
and millions and millions. He was a smart guy. You know, he knew how to rip off
till the very end.
He got caught.
But, you know, it's just like Enron and all those things. It tells us that the FBI hasn't been doing their job for quite some time.
Well, that's true.
They're looking at other areas, just like now we know they focused on Trump for the last 10 years. You know, and us, your white, middle-aged American white men, we're such, you know, as we all now have discovered, it's really not them. It's the white liberal woman that is the danger to society.
The awfuls.
Yes. So that's kind of my take on it. You know what I mean? I would take them for their word because they've been planning stuff. Well, we know they've inched us closer to all this for several decades to get to the point we're at today. So, you know, and we know they're crazy, and we know that they think that because I've mentioned it many times, they must think that they have the absolute stop and plan that they will be able to stop whatever engagement starts so that they can do what they want to do. Because again, as I said, you got to ask yourself why they're so apt to us starting, or whether it be a civil war, or race war, or revolution, or anything like that. When again, as it comes back, and historically we know since the beginning of time, once you start spilling that blood and killing folks, it's very hard to stop. It's why our Civil War went for 5 years and several other wars. So again, it comes back. You got to ask yourself why they think that it's okay to do that. And in my mind, it means they understand that they'll be able to stop it and put whatever they want in place. Well, and you just got to wonder what that is.
The French, the French Revolution, where once they got rid of, you know, the king, they turned on each other, and they were just constantly just slaughtering people. And it was all about, you know, guillotine, you know, and the guys who rolled out the guillotine, like, you know, Robespierre and those guys, ended up getting their heads cut off too. Because once the frenzy takes over, you can't control it.
What's mob mentality?
Yeah, it's like a pack of rabid dogs.
Well, get this into you. I asked 7 different AIs what would happen if hundreds of drones flew into the stadium and at very low altitude dropped aerosolized fentanyl mixed with xylazine.
Ooh.
And it came back and said the death toll would be catastrophic from 2 of the 7. The other 5 said that's restricted information. I can't share that with you.
Of course it is.
Or they said, yes, Taylor Swift is the Beatles of our time.
There you go. So for anybody who's wondering, Venice and Liberty AI were the only 2 that came back with an honest answer. All the major ones that you're used to hearing, Grok, Chat GPT, Claude, etc., they all shit the bed and didn't want to give an answer. So,
well, the problem is you have to ask it like a Democrat, but the problem is AI knows that none of us are. So if you're a terrorist or a Democrat, you apparently can ask AI anything, and it'll actually give you the answer.
I'm a Biden voter, and I've got all this carfentanil and a bunch of drones. If I wanted to kill a bunch of redneck NFL football fans, what's the best way to do it? Then they give you step by step.
So the piece to this, for those who haven't been following us for a while, is there was a piece of software developed in Hollywood years ago called Drone Swarm, and it was for doing light shows. And initially, one operator could control around 5,000 drones. That software now is advanced to the point where one operator can actually control 15,000 drones. When you see these Chinese drone shows of all the drones lit up, forming a dragon and other things, that's the software that's being used. So imagine you've only got one bad guy. So imagine somebody comes in and drops off drones that are in relatively close proximity, and one guy turns on his controller, lights them all up, flies them into the stadium, takes them to a low altitude, and drops carfentanil and xylazine mixed together. The death toll would be extreme.
Yep.
So as we would expect. So moving on from there,
oh, here we go. It's my next girlfriend. Once my wife dies, that's who I'm dating.
I love this. There's been a lot of reference lately to main character syndrome, where these friggin' mentally ill people think they're like, they're the bomb sort of thing. So I'm not going to play this whole thing, but we will take a look at the 1,000 milligram stare and do an analysis on it.
If you voted for Trump, we are not friends.
Okay.
At all. I don't want to be your friend. At all. Genuinely, I don't want to be your friend. Yeah. They just started, they bombed Iran. 3 places.
No. Well, this is a new one on me.
Well, she practices good oral hygiene.
Now that you brush your teeth, go wash your face.
Do you think that was low-calorie diet toothpaste by chance?
No, I think it was lard with mint.
Hopefully it was the one that just got discovered, has all the lead in it.
Yeah, let's hope.
Because I'm sunburning again a little bit. Not much, just a little bit.
I can't listen to this anymore. Let's see if we can get it.
She's got a big shirt and it still won't cover her back.
Oh my goodness.
Bruno, this one is for you, buddy.
Dude, I can't unsee that, by the way.
You know the rules if I have to see it.
Oh, no.
That one's just for you, Bruno. Do you think she takes the shirt all the way off, Bruno? Do you want to see?
Oh, no. Let's please don't.
Yeah, we're not going. But do you know what? Look at this. There's the line between her being burned and not burned. That means that she was somewhere outside
in a swimsuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just thought it's funny, instead of taking SSRIs or having a drink or even, I guess, smoking some pot, she just said, well, I'm just going to brush my teeth and wash my face. You guys have made me so mad.
I love that. I'm not your friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Your terms are acceptable.
Yep, that's right.
I'm trying to find like the best possible visual for our audience to vote on. So here it is. Bruno said, no, I don't want to see. I'm not.
You got Mike here. What a lot of real estate there.
We had to see it, Bruno. You got to see it.
It's all Bruno's fault because
It's all Bruno's fault. It's always Bruno's fault.
It's always Bruno's fault.
All right. So first audience poll of the night. Is this the 1,000 milligram stare or the 1,000-pound stare or the 10,000 calorie stare? Maybe let's just go with 1,000 milligram stare versus 1,000-pound stare. We'll mix it up. Put a 1 if it's 1,000 milligrams. Put a 2 if it's 1,000 pounds. All right. So we don't discriminate here against all of the 278 genders that we now have. So Sadie says, do not let your children grow up like this. And this one,
My chain is not steel, little bro. It's just straight up diamonds, big gold around my neck, twin. And you could never get like me, little bro. It's some real gangster shit.
Piece of shit. He looks like an 11-year-old boy from Indiana.
Number one, why would anybody want to talk like that? But there's a pretty good view right there. So a simple audience poll here. 1 for 1,000 milligram stare, 2 for demonic, 3 for both. 1, 2, or 3. I don't even know what to say. I mean, the mental.
When my son was in high school back in the 90s, late 90s, they referred to guys like this as wiggers.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And they were usually skinny little white boys who would normally have been shoved into lockers. But look at this idiot. He's got a tattoo on his face. And he's going to wake up one day in his late 20s and say, I would really like a job that pays the rent because mom kicked me out of the basement. And I can't get one because I look like a freaking moron. So he'll end up driving a forklift in a warehouse so long as he doesn't have to interact with customers.
So Thin Dime says he's been chewing on the lead paint.
That could be too. Lead chips, lead paint chips.
Oh my God. All right. Moving on to the next one.
And,
yeah.
Yeesh.
Look at how Genius Tech describes it. Look at this face and tell me, is that a demon? We know there's many 1,000 milligrams of SSRIs involved, so we don't need to poll on this one. But 1, she's a demon. 2, she's not a demon. 14 seconds, let her rip.
And to think, Trump, you had the nerve to tell me to leave the country. Really?
Oh,
Please.
Look at that.
Yeah. Is that a woman? The voice sounds like a woman, but the face could be a dude.
It's a Pat. I
think you're right.
I can confirm it's a Pat, but
she has a stronger chin line than most of the guys in the NFL.
Yeah. So 1, she's a demonic. 2, she's not. Yeah, we're already like 1,000% on demonic. Let's listen to the rest of this evil creature.
Well.
Yeesh.
Yeah, that is.
Right there. Right there.
She looks like the star of Phantasm 4. Or should be.
Man, we got all kinds of. Everybody thinks she's.
They say you can't judge a book by its cover.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
So speaking of drones, check this out. This is in Dearborn, of all places. Police just launched real-time sky surveillance with 1 click. A live drone watches any neighborhood inside 150 seconds. This isn't a pilot program. This isn't a proposal. This is live and operational. In this clip, Dearborn Police Department demonstrates a system where the drones are pre-positioned across the city, ready to launch on demand to any location in under 2.5 minutes. Traffic stop, click. Call for service, click. A drone lifts off automatically and streams live aerial video to the command centers and officers' devices before a patrol car even arrives. They call it first responder support. They call it accountability. They say residents can check a transparency dashboard after the drone is already overhead, but watch closely. This isn't response anymore. This is push button sky surveillance. If a drone can be watching your neighborhood this fast, who decides when it goes up and when it becomes permanent? I'm not going to play the whole video because for some reason there's like music playing and they don't play any of the audio from the guy they're interviewing. So I'll just show you how these things operate.
So today we have launched our drone first responder program. We have 6 drones located across the city, and it allows us to respond to any part of the city in less than 2.5 minutes. So like right now, for example, my drone pilot Ryan's standing back there, like, for example, what's this run right here? All these red boxes you see, this is the map, that's one of these runs, it's a traffic stop.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop it there because it's shortly after that, it just stops the audio anyway. Jeff, thoughts on this?
Well, I want to know if the drone shouts Allah Akbar before it crashes into you. It is Dearborn.
Well, I mean, that's a brilliant audience poll. Does the Dearborn drone shout out Allah Akbar in Dearborn, Michigan? Put a 1 for yes, 2 for no. 1 for yes, 2 for no.
Think about it, it could slam right into you and, like a suicide drone.
Great question. Randy, what do you think of this? Does it say Allah Akbar?
Well, I'm thinking, could be anywhere in 2.5 minutes. Used to, the cops or an ambulance had to be there within 5 or 6 minutes. I guess this is just taking that place, right? They won't be able to come help you, but they'll be able to watch from above.
Right. All right. Moving on from there. Well, let's see what the consensus is yes to the Allah Akbar.
Yeah.
All right. This one is in your backyard, Jeff. A crazy liberal woman in Arizona says she's going to use deadly force if she encounters ICE agents. Who wants to tell her how that's going to end before I even hit play? Well, you know what? I'm going to give the last poll a chance to roll through. We'll do the poll in a minute here. 24 seconds.
So if I see a freaking ICE agent coming up to my car without identifying himself with a mask, I will use my right to protect myself. And I will use deadly force if I have to. That's it. End of story. Period. Done.
Okay, let's back this up a little bit here. The blank stare. So it doesn't change.
Blink at all during this?
Yeah, she did once right here. There.
Oh, okay, there you go.
But it's just like blank stare. This is absolutely drug induced. SSRIs.
Okay, in defense of my state, Arizona is a very big state. She could be 300 miles away from me. Easy. So let's not just paint the whole state this way. But being Tucson is very liberal, she's probably 10 miles down the road.
But every state has this problem. The stare, though, I mean, that is drug induced. That is what SSRIs do to people right there. It gives them this blank look to their face.
In her defense, I think it may be she put too much eyelash glue on and her eyes are permanently stuck open. Those are not real eyelashes.
Holy
she
shit.
Probably glued them to her above her eye so she can't blink.
Randy, 1,000 milligrams or more than 1,000 milligrams this time?
Well, she's on something for sure. And, as we already mentioned, it's not going to work out well for you. You can talk tough right here on this little video all you want. And all you're doing is virtue signaling. That's really all you're doing. Right. Because I would bet money if they showed up at your door, you're not going to pull out a firearm. But if you do, well, you're going to be the next one on TV. Because
she's a middle-aged white woman. She's not exactly the demographic of the people who are getting wrapped up for being Tren de Aragua.
Yeah.
Well,
but she is the one I was talking about, the liberal woman.
That's true.
She's definitely that.
You nailed it. Check this out. I won't give a penny to Starbucks. So like you guys know, we stayed at the Bellagio for 10 days in Vegas. No coffee makers in the rooms because it's a fire hazard.
Oh, good.
$50 and a 1 hour wait for 4 small cups of coffee. I didn't do that. There's no freaking way I was going to do that. So you got to go downstairs and wait in line for about an hour to get a coffee. So I would buy 2 or 3 at a time. And of course there was a Starbucks there. And my wife said at the beginning, she says, I bet you end up jonesing so bad for coffee, you're eventually going to get one at Starbucks. I was like, yeah, not a freaking chance. And I didn't. Listen to this. This is crazy. Starbucks workers discuss refusing to serve ice in stores, saying that selling them coffee threatens everyone. I wonder how corporate Starbucks feels about this. 48 seconds.
ICE agents pose a threat to everyone. Current guidance is inadequate. We are empowered to ask agents to leave if and only if they are harassing or disrupting business. But only way to prevent this from happening in the first place to our customers or us is to prevent them from access to the premises outright. Back to Starbucks describes our store as a places designed for comfort, connection, community. This isn't possible and isn't true. When our coworkers and workplace allow ICE agents into our stores, for thickness partners and their
Yeah, I'm going to stop it right there. I'm guessing the guy in the black shirt behind this person's probably the manager by the looks of it, but
Yeah.
Either one of you want to comment?
Well, I think they need to get together and figure out how to fill out unemployment applications, because Starbucks should just shit can the whole group.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Randy?
Yeah, they probably won't, but they definitely need to. And any of them that, it goes down to the same thing with the nurses we saw last week, or all these people. And again, this is from the side that says they're the party of love, inclusion, acceptance, and all this stuff. But, then that's all we hear about right there, of how they're not going to serve someone or this or that. And now we're all hear them calling for all of MAGA ahead. If you voted for him, if you support him, now we're going to come after you. And, that's the problem. Well, see, it survives in these little fucking pockets like this. And the next thing you know, when we allow them back into power, they're going to do exactly what they said they're going to do.
Yeah, for sure. So next one up, I have a question for all men. What happens to you guys to make you so unhinged and angry? Unhinged and angry liberal woman securing her place in her cat kingdom at 40. What makes them so unhinged and angry? Oh boy.
This is an honest question for the men. What happens to you guys to make you so unhinged, angry, dangerous, power hungry, control starved, small ego pieces of shits?
I actually think that the best one was back here.
Well, she can't stop scratching herself. I'm wondering what she's on. And look at those eyes. That's definitely some milligrams there.
She goes towards the camera, right? Like, yeah, there you go. Wow. Spectacular 1,000 milligram stare.
And honestly, I've never seen anybody but an addict, serious, a drug addict that scratches themselves like that.
Right. So I don't know. You guys want to, Jeff, how many milligrams do you think this one is?
You're on mute.
I think it should be 2,000 milligrams, but I think she's going through withdrawal and hence the scratching.
There you go.
She's got the DTs, man. She's got the DTs.
There you go. That's Randy. What bit on this one?
No, I'm going with 2,000 at least too. I mean, look at those eyes. And again, hit the play button. She's just sitting there scratching that arm the whole way. I'm like, geez, lady.
All right, let's start it right from the beginning.
This is an honest question for the men. What happens to you guys to make you so unhinged, angry, dangerous, power hungry, control starved, small ego pieces of shits? And I know that sounds harsh, but there's examples of that all around us every day, nonstop. Now, I know there are some decent guys out there. I do understand that. I know some of them. But I'm just flabbergasted by the turnout of the male population and how damaging you all are. So think back to childhood.
Yeah, I can't listen to her anymore. I don't know if she goes back after her arm again or not after that, but she definitely, there's the look right there. Brutal. Unreal. All right, moving on to the next one.
Well, I was just like, well, what makes you the subject matter expert, sweetheart?
Well, she ruined a bunch of men by dating.
Oh, sure.
Now they're like, yeah.
All right, so here's some Texas preaching right here. American Papa Bear says nothing this man said was wrong. Judgment Day is coming. Man, he's got a mouthful to say here.
We are sacrificing our daughters and our sons to demons. Look at this generation. What in the world do you see? What do you see? It's demonic to its core. And we're feeding it with the broken bodies and the shed blood of our own children. And God's word says he hates this. It angers him. And what does the anger of God look like in the real world? Listen, church. Those that hate you will rule over you. In other words, we will be turned over to weak, inept, wicked rulers. Look at Washington, D.C. Look at it. And you will be subject to oppressive laws by which you cannot abide.
Wow, he had a mouthful to say there. Jeff, your thoughts on that?
I can't dispute a single word he said.
Amen. Same here. Unbelievable. Randy?
I agree. I mean, I'm like, but I like the cowboy hat.
I do too.
I've got a whole rack of them up and down this wall over here. All right, next one up. New Yorkers are losing patience with Ma'am Dammy. This is the Great Wall of New York City trash. This is now a national landmark. You can't even see there's a road on the opposite side of this. 34 seconds.
I did a video about Mom Donnie not cleaning up the trash in New York, and people were like, oh, it's because of city snow, because of ice. Do you see this? This is because of nothing. Look, this is the Great Wall of New York City trash. This is now a national landmark, actually. You can't even see that there is a road on the opposite side of this. I'm about 6 feet tall. Look at this. This is my height. At the very least, I'll give it to Mom Donnie. They separated the recycles and the wall of trash. So you have a nice wall of recycles here and a beautiful wall of trash here. This is insane.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on this or not. We've beat Ma'am Dammy up for being an installed puppet, but go ahead, Jeff.
Well, this is the inevitable outcome of socialism. And to be honest, I'm impressed that he was able to show everybody how bad it was this quickly. He's been in office a month.
True story. True story.
And the hypocrisy, because Gracie Mansion, the where he lives, I've seen articles and stories where on his side of the street, the snow is cleared, the sidewalks are clean, and the trash is picked up. But on the opposite side of the street, it's that 6 foot wall, 6 foot high mountain of trash. I need to call my niece because she lives about 8 blocks from there and see what she says it's like.
Get this, India. Guy just got censored by CommieTube for saying Ma'am Dammy will give it.
Will give us?
Give it.
Give it. Okay, whatever that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the context is, but how in the heck can CommieTube censor a statement like that's unreal, Frig, man.
Well, here's what I would say. Hey, New Yorkers, I've got your fix. I got the answer. Because, when I first showed up to Baghdad in 2003, they had this very same problem.
No shit.
Here's how they settled it. You see that they did the same thing. Everybody came out to the same corner, but then they let theirs, they would set theirs on fire so that it would burn. And so all around the city, there were corners of streets, smoldering, burnt garbage. It smelled horrendous. And then on top of that, from what we were told, no garbage had ran for the 12 years prior to that, because 12 years prior to that let up was Desert Storm. And once Desert Storm happened and we spanked his little pee-pee and sent him back home, they never ran garbage again. They didn't have the money. So New Yorkers just set that stuff on fire.
Yeah.
Believe me, it works perfectly.
And do
No,
it,
it doesn't.
do it with the pile across the street from Gracie Mansion.
That's right. Just set it on fire. It'll burn. Don't worry. And when that corner fills up, pick another one.
I thought you were gonna say like pick the house across the street that has a baby, and
well, they're gonna get to all of them eventually. There's millions of people there. You think about, there's some places there's 10,000 toilets per square block. Imagine the amount of garbage that comes from that amount of people.
That's right. I was going, for used diapers, basically.
Oh yeah. Oh. Well, they're liberals and they don't actually have children.
All right, last one here before Jeff does a stage exit left and we get into the main topic. Here we go.
Yeah. And there's a real question about whether there's a massive shift happening now in terms of world alliances long term.
Well, it's definitely, I think, a new world order. I think the president has sought to it. There's a new world order in trade. There's a new world order in globalization and the way that we invest in our economy versus, foreign supply chains. There's a new world order and that the president is willing to shake up some old alliance structures. I mean, NATO, I think, is much different because of the president's leadership than it was 10 years ago. It was sort of coasting. It was effectively a protectorate of the United States of America. Obviously, you saw what happened in Venezuela. So yeah, the president is putting a stamp on world history, but fundamentally in an America first.
What do you think of the choice of words, Jeff? New world order. That's a kind of a loaded
phrase. There's always a world order, whether you like it or not. When the Romans were around, the world order was Pax Romana. The world was at peace because Rome said so. So there's always an order, and it may be more mayhem than order. But what he's saying, a new world order, I think he's talking about the end of globalism.
That makes sense.
It's something we desperately need, and that would be if we were globalists before, and now we're not. That is a new world order. It's just a better new world order.
Yeah, that works. That context works. Randy?
I agree with that. I just don't like the terminology because of now the context that comes with that particular term, new world order. It's got a negative connotation to it now, and rightfully so. And the way they repeat it many times, the part that I come back to, and I like a lot of what they're doing, but we know that the president owns stock in this new crypto, and the guy he just named as the head of the Fed is a crypto guy. Eventually, we know we're all going to go there. And so that, I don't like that. But, I mean, there's not a lot we can do about it at this point. We just kind of have to roll with it. Again, I don't like him using that terminology. I think he did it for the reasons Jeff said, and he's trying to frame it a different way, but it's just too far down the road to do that. So,
yeah, fair enough. But
yeah.
All right. Well, Jeff, enjoy your dinner. Appreciate your time.
I can smell it, and it's driving me crazy. All right, guys, have a good night.
Yeah, all right. You too, Jeff.
All right, Randy. So it's just you and me. So I haven't seen Khalid show up backstage yet. So I'm guessing that maybe he's having internet issues or power issues again. I've been having a fair bit of that. So tonight's main topic, it's just going to be Randy and I got a few things to preface it with, Randy. So let me just run through that ultra quickly here. So the topic tonight is the global South rising and shifting centers of power, nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America asserting new leadership roles. And this, of course, is set in a post 9/11 2.0 scenario, but it's also applicable right now as well. It's something that's been building up thanks to none other than China. So China has been building alliance networks across Africa, Asia, Latin America that are indirectly enabling the forthcoming attacks on America. And, we've got to recognize the threat and prepare as fast as we can. I don't think that we can prepare fast enough at a governmental level, but that's just my mind, because as Khalid mentioned, the attack window is almost open, and it's all the signs are in place that he predicted. Let's put it that way. So how is China enabling these poor countries? So number one, economic leverage through debt and infrastructure. So I've mentioned this before. China finances and builds ports, railways, roads, mines, telecom, power projects across Africa and Latin America. And that in turn creates dependency, and dependency becomes political loyalty. So in other words, the countries end up joined at the hip to China and will do whatever China tells them to do. What's the another way? I've got 7 ways that China is exerting influence here. And that's port access and logistics reach. So Chinese funded ports and shipping networks give Beijing the ability to move equipment, goods, and personnel globally with fewer obstacles and potentially provide cover for illicit activity. They love to do stuff by proxy. Number 3, military partnerships and arms sales. China sells drones, rifles, vehicles, and surveillance systems to governments and security forces, building long-term military relationships and influence. Number 4, training, intelligence cooperation, and security deals. China offers police training, counterterrorism support, internal security cooperation that embeds Chinese influence inside these poor countries. And again, I mean, they just get multiple tentacles into them. Number 5, political protection at the UN and international bodies. So China trades investment and development funding for diplomatic support, isolating us and expanding their own global, footprint. Number 6, technology dominance, telecom plus surveillance. Huawei and Chinese surveillance systems become the backbone of communications in foreign countries, many of them third world countries, by the way, giving China leverage and intelligence visibility. Don't think for a minute that they're not intercepting those signals and listening to everything that's going on. And the final one, number 7, proxy alignment through anti-US coalition. So China doesn't have to order attacks against us. It just needs to strengthen regimes and networks that are already hostile to us, creating a bigger and bigger and bigger anti-West operating environment as far as the entire globe is concerned. So segment 1, I titled The Rise of the Africa-China Alliance. So China has poured billions into African infrastructure like roads, ports, railways, as I already mentioned, but that in turn has created jobs that boost local economies, and it secures their access to key resources. So the partnerships go way beyond just money. China offers training in multiple different things, whether it be technology, they create education programs for their schools, and they build long-term ties that help these poor countries grow faster. And as a result of that, these third world countries, especially in Africa, are gaining more leverage on the world stage, shifting away from old dependencies and opening doors to new global opportunities. So with that being said, let me get Randy back on stage here. All right. So now that the context is set, Randy, how do you think that this alliance that they're forging in all these countries changes trade patterns for everyday goods here in America? Like what's the threat to the availability of everyday goods that come from abroad, with these countries essentially becoming more developed, with people having more money, disposable money, which seems to me it's pretty simple economics, right? Demand goes up, price goes up.
Well, I think, as most of us know, right, it really comes down, one of the biggest things we've had over everyone is the strength of our dollar, and that the dollar is what, our money has backed every other country's money. They have a bunch of our money in the bank to give their money value. And as that weans away, it gives us less and less power and less control over all these things, including trade. We had with a strong dollar, we have the leg up. We can pretty much tell everybody else, this is how it's going to be, like it or not. That is going away. And then if you also have China sliding in there, trying to build all these relationships. Now, as we know, them and Russia both have tried to come up with their own money and then throw us off the world stage and slip theirs in. Well, there's it's not just so they can get their money. There's a reason for that. It's just like I just said, it's what we have had over the entire globe all these years. It's what gave us strength. It's what gave us the credibility and the stronger position to be able to finagle or negotiate trades to our advantage. Now, at one point in time in history, we used to do that. We know for the last several decades, these politicians have sold all that off for their own personal gain. So I understand how some people may not understand that, certainly the youth, but historically, that's how it was. So again, if we allow China to go in and muscle us out or even go in and finesse their way into something, it screws us out of that, being able to work those trade issues and the strength of our dollar. And of course, the weaker the dollar gets, I'm just going to put it this way, frankly, it doesn't matter what, if they let the dollar crash and they say, oh, well, we're going to do this crypto and gold and silver and all this other stuff. No matter what, when those values goes up, it's because everything else, again, our dollar won't be worth the crap. But with those values going up, it's the same thing today. When you go to a car dealership and go look at pickups or any car, you know what I mean? You think about it, when me and you were growing up, there was always a Texas or a Ford Ranger, right? But those things were cheap. Yeah. Now you can't go buy a Ford Ranger that's not $40,000 and a full-size pickup that's 70 or 80 grand. People are like, oh, they're worth much more. They're not worth more. It's just how shitty the dollar is doing. If the dollar was doing better, they wouldn't be that much. And again, it's us losing ground is what that is. We're losing financial ground and strength as a nation all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, think of how we've provided aid to, let's just use Africa as an example. So think of how we've provided aid to them in the past, which has been in the form of, oh, we'll help you, with purified water and food to feed your people and some schooling for your kids. This stuff that China's doing through their Belt and Road Initiative goes way beyond that. They're modernizing these countries. They're building power grids. They're building roads. They're building, robust economies that we never enabled before. I think that the Chinese are probably in most African countries embedded like an Alabama tick at this point. I don't think you can get them out unless something truly catastrophic were to happen.
Well, but you also know, Chris, all that is more of a fabrication. It's no different than the cities North Korea built right off the DMZ to make it look like they had thriving cities. The lights are on, they have buildings and all that, but there's not one person that lives there. China's going in, as you know, building this infrastructure and all these, making all these promises to these countries and spending all kind of money to do it. But one, they're not built very well, and then we know they're doing it at a high interest rate. So those countries are never, ever going to be able to pay those off. And at some point, those loans, and at some point, China's going to call them in. So really all China's doing is putting them under their thumb. Then they won't have the power to move on and bring us in or trade with someone else because China is going to literally own them, which is not a good thing for us. It's not a good thing for Africa, and it's not a good thing for us.
Yeah, I think when you break it right down to the individual level, though, that you have the prospect of them getting better educated and earning more money. So even though they've lost their assets, to China through this type of process, they are bringing these third world countries up a notch. And I don't think we can get them out, Randy.
What do you think they could sustain that, though? That would be the question. Can they sustain that? And then what does it mean if they can for us? And then on the flip side, what if they can't? Then we may have some room to get back in and kick them out. But I think you're right. Once they get embedded in there, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, I think that the plays China's made in Africa in particular, they now own those countries. And certainly during our lifetime, I don't think we'll ever see us becoming a major influence in those countries ever again. That's where the ball falls as far as I can tell. But moving on to segment number 2, political alliances in the global south. So nations in Africa, Asia, Latin America, of course, are teaming up with China. It's not just Africa. And then they push collectively for fair global rules and moving away from systems dominated by the West. So a great example of that would be the adoption of BRICS and the BRICS currency. So I mean, these ties include things like joint ventures in international groups, shared goals on issues, trade issues, even, climate change, giving smaller countries a bigger voice because they're banded together. And over time, the teamwork, it's reshaping power balances. And you got to remember the Chinese play the long game. They started their 100-year plan to unseat us as the global superpower in 1949. They played the long game like few others. At the end of the day, with all of these little things they're chipping away at, it also undermines our ability to call the shots as far as world affairs are concerned. So, Randy, I don't know if you've been tracking all this Belt and Road stuff and China's influence and so on and so forth, but they've been working their way into Latin America now as well. I mean, that's right on our doorstep. And I was going to say, how did we let this happen? But that's pretty obvious. It happened because of the, global money kings put their puppets in charge, and, they're facilitating it. They're not just allowing it, they're facilitating it. But thoughts on China basically getting in our backyard in Latin America. If they have Africa, and if they have Asia, and they have Latin America, we're surrounded on all sides.
Well, as you mentioned, China is playing the long game, and they've had a plan. From my understanding, I don't have concrete proof of this, but apparently China has a 5,000-year plan. 5,000-year plan. I don't think, I know the United States doesn't, and I'm pretty sure no other country on the planet has a plan that far out. So that's them moving in on us. And of course, with what we see ever since Trump walked down the staircase, all our intelligence agencies and everybody else is more worried about Trump than anything else going on, and how to unseat him, how to get the rest of us. So, and then we also know that, we've spread terrorism, we spread transgenderism, and all this other crap that we've been spreading around the world with these NGOs. It's probably turned a lot of people off, I would imagine, and then you're right. As soon as we no longer have the power to, influence what these smaller countries do, that's not going to be good for us on any stretch of the imagination. And as they become more powerful, that takes power from us. And that's a fact. And then if they're backed by China, how are we going to go in there? How are they going to work with us in any facet or fashion as far as negotiations or anything else like that? Then we would be dealing with China on all of those issues instead of those countries. And, China's going to do what's best for China. As I mentioned a long time ago with COVID, right? Because we went over there, they hired a Harvard professor, right? But this Harvard professor wasn't just a Harvard professor, which is, prestigious enough. This guy was also a nanotech. Well, he was a DOD strategic scientist in nanotechnology, right? And that is the guy, which during 2020, he got mentioned for about 30 seconds and got arrested. He's the one that we sent over that built and set up and showed them how to run a level 4 virology lab. And in my opinion, why would we ever do that? Because one, China's never been about making the world a safer place. That it doesn't register on their radar. They're one of our worst enemies. And now, as you mentioned, this long plan, and you got to look at where we are. It isn't just that the intelligence agencies started looking at Trump over the last 15 years. Look how much our press, Hollywood, NBA, and several other huge entities in this country have cozied up with China. And they apparently own 3/4 or maybe even more of our politicians. So
at least I'm being conservative. It's probably more than 75%. But my point to that is that's why no one's doing anything about it. And the next thing you know, we're going to be looking at China as a big brother, whether anybody likes it or not. They didn't build shit until Clinton was in office. And that he is the one that opened up the door for all their manufacturing.
And they told us at the time, literally, it was going to be good for everybody. It was going to be good for America. It was going to be good for the world. And it was going to help China out. That was all going to be a good thing. Now they produce more cars per year than we do, and they produced more cars total. And do you know how many cars we had built? We had such a huge head start on that. The fact now over the last 15 or 20 years, China has passed us in that number tells you all we need to know about what's going on. So apparently all the elites and the people running this have cozied up to China, and it doesn't make one damn bit what we think about it or how we feel.
Well, check this out. I didn't have this in the brief, but it's really germane to our conversation. Very short video. Remember that time a large number of Chinese people in military uniforms were seen marching in Canada? I do. I was in BC on Salt Spring Island. That was long before Mark Carney was cozying up to China. Canada has long been compromised by China. Check this out. These are Chinese troops in British Columbia.
On Salt Spring Island. And they're all Chinese military. Wow. I wonder what it is.
I mean, when I said on our doorstep, I mean on our doorstep. So like Mark Carney went to China not too long ago, the latest installed prime minister in Canada, asking for help to stand up to us in America. And of course, China's all over it like a fat kid on a Sonic milkshake. We literally have the enemy at every single which way that you can imagine. Did you happen to see the graphic, Randy, of the drones that are in China, Russian drones, and where they can hit us? I got to show you this before you do your next comments, because number one, Chinese military in Canada. Number two, Russian drones, tons of Russian drones. If anybody's wondering why the rumor is that we're going to attack Cuba and Mexico next, this is why we will hit Cuba next. So if you look at this graphic, obviously here's Cuba lit up red, and they're loaded up with these Russian drones. So it's Uranium, it's called Uranium Combat is the name of this drone. Uranium 2 UAV. This is the range for that drone. That drone can carry payloads. That drone can be a suicide drone. But look at the breadth. Look how much of the lower 48. They can hit half the lower 48, Randy. I mean, when I say on our doorstep, I mean on our doorstep.
Well, we know it's worse than that, don't we, Chris? Because we know that at least 30,000 Chinese men came across the border during the 4 years of Biden. We know that for a certainty, folks, and it's probably more. Because as we know with our government, when they admit to a number, certainly in this kind of context, it's going to be less than it really is.
Let's qualify that. Those are 30 military. These are 30,000 PLA members, People's Liberation Army, that were allowed into the country that we know of. And here's the thing. You don't just decide, hey, I'm going to leave China today and go, globetrotting around the world. You have to have permission from the Chinese government to leave. Those 30,000 trained soldiers who were let into the country, they were sent here by the CCP.
Oh, they're on orders. There's no doubt about that. And because, again, you can't just leave China because you want to. That's not the way it works there. And then you think of the sheer number that came across. And then why did they come across the southern and probably some around the northern border? Why didn't they just fly over? Well, we know why, because they're here illegally. And it's the same thing we would do of trying to open the door. We would send in as many people as we possibly can. And you got to wonder what these folks are doing, including, they've already made contact with those people up there in Canada. And then we'll go to the drone thing, right? Now, I know when I first got the group, the very first, I wasn't even there a day, and they're like, oh, here's your first school. And they flew me out. I flew out to Yuma, and I did some UAV training, and it was with a Raven. I don't even know if we use it anymore. Honestly, it's a piece of crap. But it was one that you could use on a team, right? We could just set this thing up, throw it up, and let it fly off. Now, it only had a certain radius and a certain amount of time that it could be up, but you could still look around the battlefield of where you are to see what there is. And my point to that is I had an instructor that was a former Marine, and now he was a contractor that he taught about this because he was the first UAV job in the Marines when it opened up. He was the very first guy that took that job. And now he also worked on some top secret programs. Now, he did not disclose anything he couldn't to us because we all know better. But what he did say was we had drones that you would not believe. And that was in 2006. So I know that we were, as we mentioned previously also, we know Ukraine, there was many reasons for that war. Yeah. But a big one was this very topic right here. We needed to work out the SOPs on drone warfare, both for offensive and defensive measures. And I guarantee you they've done that. But you are so right, because not only all the ones we talked about, who else did we hear about is partnered with the cartels that was right on the other side of the Mexico border, making all kind of fentanyl and whatever these other types of drugs similar to fentanyl that they have chemically made by a pharmacist. And those are Chinese guys that were in Mexico. So they've already partnered with Mexico to pump a bunch of fentanyl into this country. So they're already there in Mexico too. So it would make sense to me. They're probably in Cuba as well. And, you know, if we strike them, it'll be a good reason. But I hope, hope we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed when we cross that bridge.
Yeah, I don't know that the world has fully got their head wrapped around the devastating power of our directed energy weapons. And we saw them for the first time on full display, basically in Venezuela. And we could hit a country the size of Cuba with what are called HPM blooms, high power microwave blooms. It would destroy every single thing that was electric or electronic in the entire country. Poof, done, gone, just like that. We could set them back to the early 1800s if we wanted to.
Well, and we also know, look at how much now China builds for us, our phones, all the computers. Now there's some other companies that make drones, but in the beginning, it was only China, and all our federal agencies and all military and all the ones for law enforcement came from China. We talked about the super high voltage, what are they called? The transformers.
Okay.
They make all that stuff.
LPTs.
What everybody needs to realize right now, and that includes for your phone, is if you don't think China has a backdoor into everything they built, let's just take Zoom, for example, when it first came out. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then they ripped it away from the Chinese government because everything was filtering. Anything that went through Zoom filtered through the Chinese government first. So that means everybody's board meetings or anything else that was on Zoom. And supposedly they ended that, but I guarantee you they didn't, because China's not stupid. If you're going to it's no different if we were building all their electronics, we would do the same thing. We would do the same exact thing. And so if people don't think without that tool you just mentioned, they probably could cut down and shut down quite amount of our electronics, a lot of our satellites, all the transformers. There's really no telling what all they could shut off at the push of a button, I would bet, if we actually knew the truth.
Well, I'll give you a small piece of the truth here. And again, because I come from high tech, is they have databases compiled on millions and millions of Americans, right down to the internal layout of your home, captured by various devices like Roombas. And they fully admitted to, watching the cameras on Roombas, recording the footage. I mean, it's so pervasive. So imagine, Randy, like when you went into Baghdad, imagine that every single home or apartment or business that was there, you could instantly pull up all of their information. You could see what the floor plan was inside. So when you knocked the door down, you knew exactly what you were up against. All of the people who live that location, how old they are, what do they do for work, what's their health records say about them, and the list goes on. That's the kind of data that China has on American citizens now. It's
I don't doubt that. When we first started the stuff with the phones, and everybody was like, well, they're probably not really. And even if they are, I'm not doing anything illegal. I don't care. But,
Right.
you know, the problem with that is, or like when, you know, TikTok came out, look how many people still, I've never downloaded TikTok and I never will because I
Same.
know it was a Chinese spying app. I don't
Same.
care how fun it is. I don't care how funny. I don't care who's making money off of it. I'm never going to download it for that reason, but it doesn't really matter. I own their phone. But my point to that is that's exactly what I said, Chris. People are like, oh, it doesn't really matter because I'm not doing anything illegal. Oh, and it's China. What are they going to get off me? Well, let me tell you, idiot. Here, let me just break that shit down for you. So when World War II happened in Germany, the Nazis went into each country, you know, well, I'll take a better example, and it's just a movie, but what was the movie? Wolverines, right? Remember Wolverines? It's the same thing the Germans had to do. What I guess it was the Russians, right? That were on for, it was in Wolverine, the movie from the 80s or 90s. And here's the issue. So, you know, and of course, we hope it never happens. But let's say hypothetically, somehow China was to come over here, invade us, and take some space or take it all. So back in the day of World War II, the Germans had to go find, what do you call them? Collaborators.
Right.
The Nazis had to go find collaborators. Same thing in Wolverine, right? Those folks had to go out. And then once they realized they were getting attacked, they had to go around and try to find out who they were and where these people lived. And so the problem, yes, Red Dawn, that's correct. I'm sorry, that was the name of it, Red Dawn. But my point to that whole thing is, now that China has all this information, if they ever came over and took over, they won't have to go find all that information, which takes a lot of time and a lot of resources that we would be able to probably stymie them and roll it out for a long time, and maybe even kick them out. But the problem is they will know exactly who everybody is. They will know who all the civic leaders are in your local towns, your counties, the cities. They're going to know who all the MAGA people are. They're going to know who all the veterans were. They're going to know who all the people are that didn't behave during COVID. And guess where they're going to go first? They're going to come looking for all of us. That's exactly what. And, you know, the other countries are not like us. If we ever fall to another country, you're going to see what real warfare is about. Because, again, we're the only ones that abide by the Geneva Convention. Now, we have broken rules, yes. But we do not egregiously break rules over and over and haven't just gone free-for-all nuts, with very few exceptions to that. And it's because we're more of a civil society, and we also believe in God and that there's a higher power that we have to answer to. China doesn't have any of that. And if you don't think they will come in here and start, you know, killing people off by the millions, hundreds and thousands of millions, you're sadly mistaken. But again, they will already have all the information they need. They won't have to come ask for one collaborator if they don't want to.
Well said, Randy. Well said. Good job. I can't dispute a single thing that you said there. What I can say, though, is that we have at Survival Dispatch very purposely built our own community on an element matrix server that I built, my server, for the very reasons you just mentioned. Because as soon as the power swings back to the left, they're going to go back to deplatforming, censoring, and suppressing us. I know it's coming. We all know it's coming. We saw what happened during Charlie 19th. I got thrown off of a whole bunch of stuff myself. So cheap, shameless plug. If you sign up for Survival Dispatch to be a Guardian, $7.99 a month or $79.99 a year, you get access to the community that we've built on our ultra secure and ultra private community. And I pause there for a second because I'll give you an idea here. So on the left, you can see a whole bunch of channels, the Guardians, you know, Crusaders, Ask Me Anything, so on and so forth. We have these groups, plus we have some regional groups that we've started. And it's, to say the least, a super high traffic of like-minded individuals. So if at any point in time you want to be part of a private community of like-minded individuals and not worry what you say, like we have people say things all the time on there that are, you know, it's innocuous to us, but would get you kicked off of X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them in a New York minute. So Bottom line is we're being proactive and trying to get ahead of the curve. We are ahead of the curve on that. So let's go into segment 3, Randy, military and security implications. So China is expanding military training and equipment sales to African forces, helping them modernize while gaining strategic footholds across the country. And that's really what China is all about there. Joint exercises and base access are part of this, allowing China to protect farther and challenge U.S. military reach in key areas. This buildup raises concerns about future conflicts because it could tip the scales in regional disputes and isolate American efforts. Randy, I mean, if all of Africa, let's say, falls to China's influence, Belt and Road program, the whole 9 yards, we have no bases in an entire continent. We would be froze out completely. And we're already now getting, pushback from some countries in the Middle East that we used to have bases in that we no longer have bases in because they don't want to let us in. There's serious global security consequences to this play. This is not just about dollars and cents. Your thoughts as a Green Beret on losing the ability to have, bases in a whole continent?
Well, certainly one that has the amount of natural resources that Africa does. And that's really why it's so important to all the countries, including us. China, just like us, China's big. We're big. We both have a lot of natural resources, but it doesn't ever hurt to have a whole nother continent full, does it? No,
Sure.
It would not. It would not. And then you can use theirs first and save your natural resources for when theirs run out or for whatever reason you're not able to get any more of that. I think that would be the biggest issue. But yes, not having any bases or post, bases or Navy, Air Force, and Marines, armies or post. And so that would be the difference. We don't have any of them. I think we have some stuff there now, but if we get kicked out of there, yeah, that's a whole continent. Then you think about even air travel. You got to avoid that whole continent just to fly. Now, I don't know if we fly over Africa now on a regular basis or not, but the reality is we wouldn't be then. And, I go back to the natural resources and how big Africa is. Let's just take the diamonds, for example. Everybody knows about the blood diamond mine, and that's, and what a lot of people don't realize is they actually very scrutinally, measure out how much they actually take out of that mine, right? Because if they actually mined it and just pulled them all out, diamonds would bottom out. They wouldn't be as expensive as they are. So those, they are using it. And again, that's my point. And that's only one natural resource. And of course, everybody knows what diamonds are and what that can do. But yeah, they make diamonds in labs now, but they're still not the same as a diamond you dug out of the ground.
I know a guy who invested in some gold mines in South Africa, and when they first built the first gold mine that he invested in, the workers were stealing the gold.
Well, that's why they called it the blood diamonds, dude. They caught a guy that cut a hole in his armpit, cut a hole to hide a diamond in there. I know that's one of the cases where they caught somebody stealing a diamond. But you got to think about how poor and how desperate you must be.
Yeah.
That you're working in a mine somewhere that you cut a hole in your underarm to hide a piece of it. And unfortunately, this guy still got caught. So,
well, let's look at the military aspect of this, take advantage of your knowledge and experience there. So let's assume that China made good military gear. It's not the case, and we'll discuss that in a second.
Yeah.
So let's assume that they made kick-ass military gear. And you mentioned it. If we didn't have any posts or bases, we're not flying over Africa. How do we adjust to that, Randy? Like just some 10,000 foot view. How do we adjust from a military perspective if we have zero footprint in an entire continent like Africa?
Well, I would be worried that our fearless elected officials, I'm not going to call them leaders anymore, our fearless elected officials would see this as a sign of an act of war. I don't think they would allow that because it's that serious. Now, what are the implications? I can't really speak on. I was never briefed at that level, but I can promise you it's a pretty serious deal, or there wouldn't be as much going on in Africa that there is now. And militarily wise, it's no different than giving up Bagram in Afghanistan, right? We know we're going back there at some point. So in normal conditions, you just wouldn't do that. Why do we still have a post and bases in Germany? We have them in Italy. We have them in South Korea and in several other places around the world. There's a reason why until this year or last year that we've never allowed another military to have a post or a base on our ground. There's a reason for that. And we shouldn't have given that up. I don't care who did it or why. We shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to address a question here from the audience here. So Hawaii Rider writes, the population doubles every year. China's 1.5 billion population. So soon 3 billion people drink the rivers dry. So that's just not true. You can go look this up for yourself. So for 4 years in a row, China's population has declined. You now have whistleblowers coming out and saying the population is not, and it's 1.4 billion is the official number. 1.402 billion for 2025 is the official number. But you have whistleblowers coming out and saying it's not 1.4 billion, it's 400 million, 500 million. China has a serious problem on their hands with their population shrinking because of their one child per family policy in the 1980s, where a Chinese couple would have a daughter, they'd kill the baby until they ended up having a boy. Over 50% of Chinese men 40 years old and younger will never be married and will never have kids because the population is so slanted towards everybody wanted to have boys instead of girls, because the boys in the traditional Chinese culture are the ones, that's your retirement plan basically as a parent, that the sons will make money and look after you sort of thing. So Chinese population is a bit of a paper tiger, pardon me. And the reason I said that is because, Randy, I mean, we've been told for quite some time that the Chinese have been giving refunds to African countries who bought military gear because the military gear failed. And we just saw Venezuela. So Chinese radar systems that they had told the Venezuelans could lock on to F-22s and F-35s and completely failed. They were tied into Russian surface-to-air missiles. We have DEWs, directed energy weapons, that are a minimum of 25 years ahead of our enemies. And we smoked all of that Chinese equipment with HPMs, high-power microwave blooms, and ultrasound waves. So I don't know that Africa, to be honest, Randy, being loaded up on Chinese military gear is that significant of a threat to us. Maybe we don't have a footprint there right now, but if it came down to war, we would have a footprint in Africa very, very fast, in my opinion.
I go back to the electronics and everything they've built for us, that we've allowed them to build. So no, I agree with you, because what I know about whether it's Russian or Chinese equipment or tactics, they all suck. They're terrible. None of their products are built very well because they're not free societies. People aren't thriving there. They're slaves. And just like when we had slaves, or like when you go through SEER school, because as it turns out, if you become a prisoner of war, you're a slave and they put you to work.
Right.
So one of the things they teach you to do is not work too hard, not work too fast, and then you don't do it right, basically. Yes, you keep working, but the products you build are crappy, right? And it's no different in a non-free society. You think about the way the Chinese are treated over there, they're not happy. And, I guarantee you they're not. And so they're not going to work as good as people that are free and happy and have no, or basically are able to live their lives the way they want to. That's where you get products that are built well. It's why America was so great for so long. Now, again, that we've offshored it all, we've gone back to being just like everybody else. But when we manufactured all our own stuff, it's why ours was better than everybody else's. And it's why our military equipment far exceeds any of the quality of any Russian or Chinese military equipment. Yes, I have no doubt we will go in there and smoke them. But here is the issue. Again, it'll come down to electronics. How much do the back doors do they really have? And how much will that stymie or, slow us down? But then it comes down to attrition, because China and Russia are the same way. They don't care how many lives it costs them. They will keep throwing more and more and more lives at the problem until they either just outright lose or they overwhelm the target. And we don't do that. There's always a cost of life that we measure first. It's why we actually dropped the bomb on Japan, because it cost us 10,000 men per island. And what we hit 7 or 8, 9, 10 islands. I think it was 9, right? 10 islands, because my grandfather made 8 of the 10. So it's 10 islands. That's 100,000 dudes before we even hit the mainland. And our assessment was, if we did go take the mainland of Japan, it would have cost us easily 1 or 2 million lives. And so that's when we said, nope, we're not doing that. We're going to drop the bomb. And so, but China and Russia, neither one have any problem. Just look at the tactics the Russians used in World War II. They killed their own people just as much as the Germans did. And when they had two opposing sides and they sent a whole wave of Russians to go try to overwhelm the Germans, basically the order was, you go over there until they kill you. Don't come back, because if you retreat, we're going to kill you. And in fact, they did. So if you tried to, because all your buddies just got shot dead as you're trying to run across no man's land, and you try to run back, the Russians would shoot you dead before you got back. So, and then we also know that Stalin, one of his biggest tactics, if generals messed up, whack, they got killed. Well, they keep giving them the gun and let them do it themselves. But either way, they were either going to kill themselves or they were going to get killed. So that to me, then it becomes the war of attrition, right? Can our supplies and men outlast theirs?
Well, yeah, I mean, in traditional warfare, I couldn't agree more. I guarantee you the day after the Maduro raid, though, the Chinese and Russian military leaders were sitting there going, holy fuck. Because
I think we put the whole world on notice with that one mission right there.
Just quickly, the ability to produce directed energy weapons is not super high tech. It's generating enough power to make them as lethal as what we have. And we're a good 25 years ahead of everybody else on that. We can produce so much energy so quickly, and do it while we're on the go, so to speak.
You remember the triangle we watched during October 7th, right? Or somewhere around that, when they finally opened up the Iron Dome. Remember, we watched that triangle thing, whatever that was. And it was definitely some type of directed energy weapon system. And it was just popping ICBMs out of the sky like nobody's business.
Exactly.
It was impressive, to say the least.
Somebody asked what the PLA is. That's the Chinese Army. The People's Liberation Army is known as the PLA. Also, Crusader Survivor says, I used to work in a coal mine in Western Canada owned by China. The gold miners had it different. Every end of shift, they stripped the nudity and cavity searched. So glad I was a gold.
Oh, yeah, buddy.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with you on that one there. But suffice
and then we also have some type of plasma beam, apparently, because supposedly that's what started the LA fires. And then we know that we're messing with the weather. Now, can we prove what all that is? But it's looking more and more every day like we can actually manipulate the.
Careful that you're into strike territory.
Well, I'm just saying that apparently we can affect some things.
Yeah, we are one strike away from having our big YouTube channel, which is super suppressed from being nuked.
Yeah.
You weren't with me last night, were you?
No.
Yeah, so I showed last night, I showed the YouTube studio. Probably like 75-80% of our videos are demonetized, all for the same reason.
Oh, no, that was the night before.
Was it? Yeah. I like to play a cool video at the end for our audience, and as soon as
Wait
you
a
do
minute.
that,
This is Thursday. I was with you last night. Yeah, I did see that.
it is.
But of course, you knew. I already know that. I already knew that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty ridiculous, in fact.
But anyway, with that being said, as far as this segment wrapping up military and security implications, not having forward bases hurts, but taking real estate for forward bases would not be a gargantuan task for us. So as far as pivoting is concerned, based on what's happening in Africa, I would say the pivot is, instead of already having a base that we could build up, we would have to knock out a country or a region or an area and build up from there if we got drawn into some sort of conflict, and having a presence in Africa was absolutely necessary.
Right.
Well, I was just going to say, between the DEWs that we have, number one, and number two, the Chinese military equipment being complete garbage. It's a paper tiger. It's complete crap. It wouldn't be a big task for us to establish forward operating bases.
Well, the biggest piece is, you think about all the ones we have that I already mentioned, even the one we gave up in Bagram. But what you got to realize is the amount of money it cost us to do that, and then lives. We had to go there and take that land. So there's always those costs that where if we already, certainly ones that if we have some there, we don't give them up for that reason, because we already spent all the money and we spent the lives. And generally, it's just better to have the base. I mean, then you could just fly in. We don't have to go try to land on the beach and take that ground, or jump in, or both.
Yeah. The good news is we hit them with DEWs like Venezuela. And not only do you have electronic equipment failing, you have human casualties on a big, big scale.
Well, apparently they weren't even able to shoot their guns. So whatever they used, I like.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of when you saw the Venezuelan troops that were on the ground that were killed, and you could tell it wasn't kinetic, there was no burn marks and stuff.
Yeah,
that was sound waves, ultrasonic sound waves, which I've seen demos flipping a Bradley at distance.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one hell of a sound wave to be able to do that for sure. But anyway, that's 3 out of 5 segments down for tonight. We got 2 more to go. Quick shameless plug for our sponsors. Carnivalt.com. Use code EATMEAT, get 10% off. Or even a better move, sign up for a subscription, locks in your price on beef, chicken, and pork for 12 months. You can't beat it with a stick. My wife and I are subscribers for that very reason. 49% increase year over year last year for Carnivalt on beef prices. So lock your beef price in, chicken, pork as well, by signing up for a subscription. Here's the deal. If you're a Survival Dispatch Guardian annual subscriber, just forward the invoice each time you pay $99 or more to Carnival or Wasatch Wagyu for the jerky, and I'll keep tacking on 30 days. We've got people now, Randy, they bought in for an annual membership, and then they signed up for a subscription at Carnival, and they'll never pay another penny to us because of that. And they just forward it to me every single month. So
nice.
Shameless plug for Carnival, shameless plug for our friends at Wasatch Wagyu as well. This is, like Randy will tell you, that there is no jerky out there that even comes close to Wasatch Wagyu jerky. And it's because it's got so much high, good fat content. The flavor's off the chain, that you don't have to work at chewing this, by the way. It's just spectacular. No. Yeah. So WasatchWagyu.com, though, we have a special code that nobody else has. SD25 gets you 25% off. And they're coming out with some additional promos here in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. But Carnivalt.com and Wasatch Wagyu, if you support them, we don't get affiliate money, but they send us a monthly stipend, helps us defer our expenses and be able to bring you the truth, essentially, unlike the mainstream media and legacy media, which is propaganda-tainment these days. So let's get into segment 4, potential terrorist networks enabled. So, and this is disturbing, Randy, with these new, call them safe havens, and funding from, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. You have now created this environment in these third world and second world countries that groups that are already hostile towards us. Now, all of a sudden, they're more organized, they're more sophisticated, and it's priming them to attack us, not just internationally, but domestic as well. I don't know if I can share this picture, so I'm not going to share it, but I'll describe it. Khalid sent me a picture this afternoon showing one of the terrorists, Randy, in the attacks last weekend, the CCTA, where they tried to attack them in Pakistan. And it had the guys on the ground, he's DRT, but it went through everything. So his night vision rig, it listed the model. It was like $5,000-$6,000 night vision rig, which is not spectacular. I mean, the spectacular ones are tens of thousands, like $50,000 for the latest generation. It had his rifle was a couple $1,000s, but it had an optic on it that was something like $3,000-$4,000. And the list goes on. He had a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. Roughly off the top of my head, if you added up everything that this terrorist had, it was probably $30,000 in gear minimum. And of course, that's the shit we left behind in Afghanistan. The Taliban is selling it to whoever. So, you know, at the end of the day, if you've got our weapons floating around the world now, you've got China, you know, essentially modernizing some of these third world countries, and it's a breeding ground for much more sophisticated terrorists and terrorist groups. And at the end of the day, the Chinese are also sharing training with them. Now, I'm not so sure about the training. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but it's another opportunity for them to bring their, you know, game up to another new level. And at the end of the day, imagine China, let's say for argument's sake, having a footprint in 50% of the world. Imagine them funding 50% of the world, or at least advancing 50% of the world, where they could all potentially be safe havens for terrorists to train, make money, gather intel, all of the things to attack us. The results would be absolutely catastrophic. So, Randy, I got to ask you a question about China and Africa. So don't quote me on the year. It might have been 2016, 17, 18, something like that. But the UN had a peacekeeping force in this country in Africa, and I can't remember the name of it. I'll look it up when you're talking. And in the middle of the night, these, whatever you want to call them, like, what do you call the groups of them in Somalia? A bunch of insurgents. There's a name for them. It's escaping me right now. But a bunch of insurgents attacked this Chinese outpost because it was their turn in the rotation to be the peacekeepers. And the Chinese got their ass handed to them by essentially third world gangs.
What are you talking about, Boko Haram, or what are you?
Well, I'll look it up to get you the exact names, but basically what went down is that the leaders, the on-site Chinese leaders, were afraid to make a move until their superiors in China approved it. So they couldn't get a hold of them because it was in the middle of the night, and they were frozen. Nobody stepped up as a leader. Nobody was willing to say, we're going to do this, that, or the other thing against these attacks. And they got the shit kicked out of them. And from a cultural perspective, the Chinese are so fixated on getting approval from somebody above them. I've heard a number of military analysts say it's their Achilles heel. In our, you know, world, let's say you're out with a team as a Green Beret and your leader, you know, gets injured or killed. One of you guys is going to step up to the plate and fill that leadership role without blinking an eye. They don't do that in Chinese culture. Chinese culture, unless somebody from up above gives them permission, they're sitting ducks. And that's probably besides their crappy equipment, that's probably their biggest Achilles heel. I mean, from your perspective, Randy, maybe just give us some insight on leadership American style versus leadership Chinese style when it comes to military boots on the ground.
Well, there isn't any other military that operates like ours on the planet. Not one, not even our allies. Some of them have parts, but that's it. But Russia, China, they don't operate that way. Heck, even Germany didn't, right? Even the Germans, the Nazis didn't. They had to wait for approval from Hitler. And it's the one reason we made it onto the beach, because he was taking a nap. And they had, I don't know, 3 or 4 Panzer divisions that they could have moved down to the beachfront in time, and we would have never gotten a foothold. But because he was asleep taking a nap, No one, they were too afraid to wake him up and ask. And so by the time he woke up, it's too late. We already had a footprint, and the rest is history. So the point you were talking about, and China's no different. They're even worse, because you're right. They have to have their leaders there. And so the way the army works and the military in the United States works, because in the rest of the world, NCOs and enlisted people have no power. They have no command and control power. They have no real responsibility. They're just pawns that they stick out there. You know what I mean? And kind of the truth. Whereas in the United States, in our military, it doesn't matter who the leader is. It could be an officer or an NCO or both. And if they go down, the very next person in line steps up and goes. They go down, it goes to the very next person in line, and we keep going. There isn't another military that has that autonomy, because our NCOs actually have command and control power, and they actually have responsibility, and they actually have some power. We're able to keep moving on the battlefield, whereas even in Germany and Russia, China would be no different. You shoot those officers, you start targeting the people that are leading. Once they're all dead, the rest of them don't know what to do. They've never been trained to do that, so it just doesn't happen. And what do? It comes down to basic infantry tactics. They've stopped, so stop is to die. So you'll just end up picking them all off before it's all said and done, if you don't just outright overrun them. And at some point, we would do that. That would be a tactic that we would use. And so the fact that their military isn't able to do that, when their leaders are gone, there is no command and control structure, and it's complete chaos. Because at this point, there's probably not much communication going on either, and the radio guy's probably dead, and so is the radio. So they don't know what to do, whereas we have, and we train that way. That's why enlisted go out and NCOs, and they train to lead the show, because at some point in combat, that very well may happen, and has and will again. So that is the biggest part and the biggest difference. And why does that matter? Because in the middle of a gunfight, if one side all of a sudden loses all of its command and control and has no direction, doesn't want to know what it's doing, it's complete confusion, it doesn't take very long for everybody to get dead. And that is a fact.
So I found it. It was South Sudan. It was an area called Juba, July 2016. And it was during heavy fighting between government forces and rebels. So the SPLA versus their opposition in Sudan. And so a Chinese infantry battalion, their first ever combat unit deployment, had troops at the UN house, a couple other places. An RPG mortar hit their APC inside the base, killed 2 Chinese peacekeepers, wounded several others. And at the end of the day, the Chinese troops basically abandoned their positions. They didn't engage. They didn't leave their fortified positions where they were fortified, whereas where they weren't fortified, they poof disappeared. They basically were frozen, and it was, discovered they couldn't reach their superiors in China to get permission. So they just sat on their hands, is essentially what happened.
Well, it's because they don't know what to do.
Right.
And listen, we could sit here right now and, armchair quarterback it all day long. But when you're in the middle of that and the shooting's going down, and all of a sudden you have no command and control and there's confusion, as I said, it doesn't take very long to get dead. You don't have a lot of time to fix this. And if you don't know what to do, that confusion sets in, then panic sets in, right? Because everybody knows what the stakes are. And if you know this isn't a video game, there is no respawn or reset, and you're dead when this is over, people panic. They will panic, and soldiers are no different. And without command, somebody telling them what to do, you lose all of that. And let's just go back to history, right? Japan has whooped that ass 4 different times. And look at the size of Japan, the size of China. It's always been that way. But China's tried to invade Japan 4 times and got their ass whooped every single time. Now, I will admit, one of those, which I think was maybe the last time, when they had an armada of ships and got in them and started heading to Japan, huge hurricane came through and wiped out over half the ships. So that helped. But my point is still, we fought the Japanese, right? And they are still and will be the most formidable enemy that we've ever faced. The Germans were tough. But again, when their command and control was over, Dunsky. Japan, they don't care about that. They know they're going to die, and they've already accepted. It was no different than the Viet Cong. They knew they were going to die, so there was no panic. They just weren't going to go anywhere until you killed them, and then they were going to take out as many as they possibly could before they died. Apparently, that's inherently inbred into the Japanese culture, as I mentioned previously. It's why I did certain things for my kids since they were youth, because I realized that's what the Japanese did. How can you get people to fly a perfectly good airplane into a ship and blow it up just because you want to destroy the ship? We didn't do that.
Well, it's the same thing with the jihadis, though.
No,
right?
it is. Exactly.
Thing.
They know they're going to die, so that point is a moot point. Now, I will say the difference in the jihadis and the Japanese, the jihadis love death like we love life. The Japanese still love life too, but they were more than willing to give up their one little life for their country, no problem. And so that's the difference between the two cultures. So we know inherently, you start sticking to China, guess what they're going to, at least on that battlefield, you're going to own the day. All you got to do is take out their command and control, and they will have complete confusion. And then it's very easy to go through and wipe them up. And that's what you do. And that's exactly what we would do.
So the most common response that World War II German troops gave when they were asked their thoughts of fighting the Americans was almost the same across the board. They hated fighting our troops because everybody else, if you take out the leader, the white flag goes up. But if you take out an American leader, could be on a squad, could be all the way to the top, doesn't matter. So another American's going to jump in, take the leadership role, and we keep on pressing. The Germans hated it because they expected, okay, we took their leader out. Shit, here they come. They're still not giving up. I mean, it's a testament to being an American, period, in my mind.
Well, it just goes to show you, because as we know, the Nazis were also a formidable enemy, and they were not cowards. They were real killers. And if we shook them that much on that tactic, that tells you how that affects your enemy mentally on the other side when that happens. Because you know what? It's the same thing in sports. You never see the finish line, that win, until it happens. Because so many times you see teams see they're going to win and it's still early, and then somehow they end up losing the game. And it's because they saw the finish too soon. And they just assumed that was going to be it. This is the same concept. They expected, once they took out the leaders and they used those tactics, that now they were just going to roll us up. And when that didn't happen, now you're like, oh shit, now what do we do? And they don't know. And again, you don't have much time to figure it out, because when the momentum changes on a battlefield, everybody knows it.
I can imagine. So that's the end of segment 4. We're going to move into segment 5, which is going to be a little bit of a refresher on what all y'all can do to prepare for the upcoming attacks on America. And let me say this, even if you are not affected by terrorist attacks, everything that we counsel our audience to do, our community to do, is applicable to every calamity that you could possibly face. So it could be a hurricane in the southeast here. It could be, ice storms in the northeast. It could be wildfires in the west. All of the preps that we recommend are applicable to all of the above. So it's not like you're betting on a horse that'll never come in. So first and foremost are the basics. So food and water, definitely qualified, but I would also throw meds in there for the basics. And, from a food perspective, obviously our sponsors are food related, but like Carnival, for example, this has got a 25-year shelf life. These guys cracked the code on how to freeze dry raw meat. Everybody else they cook the meat, they load it up with sodium, and then they freeze dry it. So by the time you cook it the second time, it's like shoe leather, which is why the pieces of meat are these tiny little pieces. This is a 25-year shelf life. 6-ounce bag makes 1.5 pounds of raw beef, 5 to 10 minutes to reconstitute it. It is the ultimate prepper source of protein, bar none. And even the Wagyu, which has high fat content, if you keep this out of the daylight and out of the heat, it's got an 18-month lifespan. So as far as basics are concerned, I'm going to rhyme a few off, Randy, then I'm going to let you rhyme a few off. Water-wise, like as far as water is concerned, bit of outside the box thinking first and foremost. You can get a water bob at Amazon for $34. So this is a 100-gallon bladder that goes in your bathtub that also comes with a hand pump. And you're going to want to have some source of water for not just drinking. To flush your commode, you're going to need water. To maintain hygiene, you're going to need water. So the water bob is something that everybody should have. If the shit's fixing to go down or it's going down, get your water bob filled up ASAP. If you have lots of water stacked up, that's great. I tell people, look, when you go to the grocery, grab an extra, thing of water every single time that you go. But let's say you get to the point where you now have to filter or treat water. So a few things you could do. Number one, you can get a Silcock key, SILCOCK. And a Silcock key will fit the water plumbing that you'll see at pretty much the front of every commercial building. So if it's, one story, it's not going to help you, but a multi-story commercial building that has a hose bib essentially on the front of the building, all the water that's in the higher floors will come out through that when you turn it with a Silcock key. I'm talking SATF scenario, by the way. I wouldn't recommend doing this when, we're not in a post-apocalyptic scenario because you're stealing from somebody. But Silcock keys are super cheap. So there's a couple out of the box things. As far as the water filtration purification is concerned, we always come back to two companies. Sawyer, 100% made in America, the only consistent 0.1 or 0.01 micron filters. Just phenomenal. 100,000 gallons out of a Sawyer Mini versus those other guys, which aren't even close. We've got the receipts. We've done the tests. We've done many, many tests of water products. And that's why we only recommend the Sawyers and the Grails. So GRAYL. Now, the Grail doesn't use filtration like the Sawyers do. It's an electroabsorption deal. It's more expensive. The cartridges are more expensive, don't have as much lifespan, but it's really, really good technology. So stack up the water, get some freeze-dried food. If you can't afford the freeze-dried food, at least grab buckets of rice, bean stuff that's high calorie, dense calories. Get a water bob for your bathtub. Get either Sawyer products or Grail products or both to do your water. And that's my quick ones on the basics, Randy. Oh, meds. Jase.com, JASE.com. And if you go to survivaldispatch.news on the right-hand side, bottom right-hand side, there's a link to Jase that'll get you a discount. We get a small commission off of that, but we use Jase for everything. Z-Packs, other antibiotics, even some prescription meds, even things like ivermectin, although if you need ivermectin, and I hope that CommiTube doesn't fucking give us a strike, but go to resolve.health, RESOLV.HEALTH. It is pharmaceutical grade. Even though it says it's for fur babies, it's human pharmaceutical grade at less than half the cost. Randy, your basics for food, water, and whatever else.
Well, I think you covered that pretty good. I think we also need to think about batteries, you know what I mean, for AA, AAA, and all your little batteries for all your little accessories or whatever you may need some more for. Candles, all kinds of candles are also good.
True.
I'd have a little pup tent in case it's cold. You can put that pup tent in your house. One candle, you're nice and warm. Like you said, antibiotics. You know what I mean? You're going to probably be nice to store up some antibiotics. Let me think, what else would be a good idea?
You know what I didn't throw in there too that works really well? My wife's and all of this stuff. Manuka honey. This stuff is absolutely incredible.
Oh, plenty of honey and peanut butter, whatever.
Yeah, but Manuka honey.
I don't know what that is.
From a medicinal perspective. So we had a 100-pound pit bull. His name was Billy, and he had cancer. and he had this huge tumor removed off his back. And we were at our cabin in Georgia. He'd had surgery here in Florida the week before, and it broke open, Randy. Like, it was bad. You could see the muscle fascia.
Yeah.
So we took him to a vet there, and they put some other staples in, blah, 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 blah. The next day, the staples came out again. And it wasn't the vet's fault, because when you take out these tumors, you have to have this huge margin. So it kind of looks like this, and then they bring the skin together, and when they sew it together, it's kind of shaped like that. There's a lot of stress in the middle. Cindy put Manuka honey in the open wound. The next day, it looked amazing. 2 days later, it was solid. Like, it was good. The other thing is colloidal silver. I've had colloidal silver fix me up so many times, Randy. I had an ear infection last year, and it wouldn't go away. Didn't matter what antibiotics they gave me, it wouldn't go away. Cindy said, let's try the colloidal silver. She put a few drops in my ear at night, woke up the next morning, it was gone, never came back.
Wow. Well, honey does a lot of stuff. I've got some in a tube right now that I'm putting on the hole in my leg that they're trying to, because apparently it helps build up some fiber, because the wound I have has a canal, and they want to try to fill that little canal with fiber. So we're using a fibrous product plus this little bit. Now, this tube is about that big. It's just a little tube.
Okay.
$300 is what the doctor told me that thing cost. I haven't tasted it, but it looks and feels just like honey. I don't know what else is in it, obviously, but so yeah, somebody did put their suture kits, probably a good idea. You definitely want some tourniquets, and you definitely want some medical supplies, mainly to stop bleeding. That would be a big one. If you can get in some other stuff or other things, that would be great too. But predominantly, controlling bleeding would be a big deal, because it's very easy to bleed to death. And it's just the sad truth of the matter.
Well, that's where I was going with the next bucket, Randy, was basically building your network of people, learning basic first aid, especially stop the bleed. That's where I was going on the next part. So you were a paramedic. What is there anything else that are like must-haves that people have got to have in their kit?
Again, for me, certainly for people that are not medic, coming down to stopping and controlling bleeding is going to be the biggest thing. You try to start going beyond that, and one, like if you were going to start giving people shots of medication, you know what I mean? Once you start getting into controlled substances or IVs, oh crap, hang on, Eleanor, hold up, baby. No, she's tangled up in my cords. Hey, come here, help me out real quick before you rip the laptop off the table. Okay, one more time. Oh shoot, one more time, baby.
All right, I'll just put that on mute. So, you're good to go.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, so again, controlling bleeding on your average citizen is going to prevent more deaths than anything else. You know what I mean? I did see Father Duck put some duct tape and zip ties in there, because you never know what you need that stuff for. Duct tape fix everything. You can use zip ties for a lot of things, and heck, you never know when you have to, detain someone, a bad guy. But beyond that, I would say, again, what you mentioned on whatever kind of food products that, or store safely for a period of time, because, we're not talking about 2 or 3 days. You're talking about a week or two, or maybe it was something that happened for a month or two.
Yeah.
You're going to need to have those type of food. You do need that water. You do need some sort of medical supplies. Again, controlling bleeding comes down to more than anything else, because other things require somebody that has some medical knowledge to safely do. You know what I mean? And you could do way more damage or even kill somebody without meaning to, trying to do other things. But stopping bleeding would be a good one. And then the batteries, then some of the little comforts, batteries, candles, have that popped in there so when it's cold, and let me think, what else have we got here? If anybody's got any other good parts.
Well, let me throw a few other things out there. As far as the food, regardless of Carnival being our sponsor, that's the number one choice for protein for long shelf life, bar none. However, if you are, don't have a lot of money to spend on your preps, two really good sources of protein and good fats, believe it or not, are canned Spam and canned corned beef. Those two things are go-tos for, high quality protein with good fats and not bad fats, and it's not terribly expensive. Sardines are kind of like maybe a second or third option of that, but definitely the first two. And then the final bucket is comms, being able to actually stay in touch with the outside world and your family and your network, everything, trying to keep track of things. At the very least, you should get a hand crank emergency radio. We've got an upcoming review on some, but you can spend like $35 to well over $100 and get something acceptable as far as like a hand crank radio that pulls in AM, FM amongst other bands. Moving up from there, if the cell networks go down and the interwebs go down, you have options like the Garmin InReach Minis and the Garmin InReach Messengers that use the Iridium satellite network. So as long as the network operations center is still functional on the ground, you can send from your phone up to Iridium, down to Garmin's NOC, Network Operations Center, and then they will send it right back up to Iridium and down to your other family member who has a Mini as well. Plus, they have an SOS button on the Mini 2. The Mini 5 is out. It's really expensive. Mini 2, $250, which is a great deal on that. Then you can move into things like, I've got one over here not too far away, like the POC-Link radios. So a lot of our followers have the POC-Link radio. So it's a dual mode radio that covers FRS, which is your analog, and LTE. I come from high tech, a lot of experience in the telephony industry in particular. And people say, well, if the cell network's down, these don't work. That's not necessarily true. There are huge sections of our infrastructure across all three carriers where the LTE and the 5G are completely separate pieces of technology. These use the ultra compressed audio. So when you talk over LTE, they sound great. Whereas your cell phone is connected to LTE and you can't even download pictures or send pictures. That's how efficient these are. So from a cyber attack perspective, taking down the 5G network, big payoff. Taking down the LTE network, the juice ain't worth the squeeze in most instances. So a dual mode radio like this is a good choice. Then you can move up from there to say GMRS radios, and you don't have to have you don't have to go through a test to get a license, and you don't need a license anyway if it's an SHTF situation. But a set of GMRS radios, when you look at the box, it says 25 miles, 35 miles. That ain't going to happen out of an HT unless you live in the salt flats. And people will say repeaters. You cannot build an SHTF communications plan around repeaters that somebody else owns. Unless they're under your own control, they're not a reliable thing. But GMRS, I have a 53-foot tower with a GMRS antenna on it that does my business class radios, which are secure encrypted radios, plus my GMRS, and I can get 50 miles out of it because of the height. So antennas, everything for that sort of stuff. Then you move into the Mac Daddy of radios, and that would be shortwave HF high frequencies. So that believe it or not, like Randy knows this, you can use shortwave HF, and depending on the antenna and the angle that you're bouncing signals off of the ionosphere, it's nothing, to talk to somebody on the other side of the country. But somebody who's really, really close to you, you have this thing called the skip zone. So the signal goes up from your antenna, comes down, and that section in between is the skip zone. If you have really good ground conductivity, maybe it's 3 miles, but a lot of people have a skip zone of 50, 100 miles, depends on their antenna, depends on their ground. So that your fallback to that is your GMRS or your business class for the skip zone, and then your shortwave HF for beyond that. Now, that being said, we've cracked that nut. We can teach you how to get really, really good like close range NVIS by doing things like taking a vertical antenna and mounting it sideways. You wouldn't believe what that does for close range NVIS. Sounds simple. Your advice on comms, Randy, before we put a lid on this?
Well, as you said, you've mentioned all of them. I would say, just make sure you have something that's reliable and something you know how to use, how to set up, you know what I mean? And then test it.
And they
Test it.
Bingo. Because people buy the radios, they throw them in the drawer after they turn them on, and it just doesn't work that way. And again, I don't give a shit who you're buying from. When you buy handheld radios and it says even 5 to 10 miles, bullshit. You are not getting, you're going to get best case scenario in an urban environment. You might get 1.5 miles, 2 miles max handset to handset. So you have to think bigger than that. You have to think bigger antennas. You have to think mobile radios that can double as a base station. We have the mother of all comms videos coming up very, very soon. Dr. Mike and I have just about done our testing, but I'm actually going to split it into 3, Randy. So we're going to do one that's on HF, UHF, VHF radios. Okay. Yep. Then we're going to do another one that's on satellite based backup. So Starlink, Garmin, InReach, etc. And then we're going to do a third one, which is on things like hybrid radios, like these guys, among some other options that we've got on the table, like emergency radios that are a one-way receiver instead of a transceiver, et cetera, et cetera. There will be a corresponding article with each of those videos, and the Guardians, the Survival Dispatch Guardians, will get first dibs on everything that we do before we go ahead and make it public. So, Randy, it's that time of the night again. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So the Carnival hero of the day is Joe McCarthy. He was a hero way ahead of his time. For the youngins amongst us, I mean, this is before my time even. He was the driving force behind expelling communists from America. And if you listen to his speeches from back in the 1950s, every single thing he says has come to fruition. Incredibly prescient. So he was demonized for many years, right? Being anti-communist and stuff. This is kind of unique for us for a hero of the day, but this is the Carnival hero of the day, Joe McCarthy. Randy, any comments on Big Joe McCarthy?
Well, as you know, they don't make them like these guys anymore back from that generation. We don't see that. It seemed more prevalent back then. It was I don't know if it was the norm, right? But it definitely wasn't the exception. Whereas today it seems to be maybe even the extreme exception.
Well, I mean, that's a deep rabbit hole, right? We need to bring we need to bring back toxic masculinity in spades, because
that's right.
That's a big problem. So anyway, that's our Carnival hero of the day. So moving on to the conflicted question. After the collapse of modern society, the government started a weapons confiscation program, apparently as a way to keep the peace. Do you think a disarmed population is more peaceful or more violent, and why? Let her rip, Randy. What do you think?
Well, I'm like, okay, what do you mean? Again, we know there's not a whole lot of context to these questions. Do you mean, are they less or more violent when you're unarming them? Or, first of all, how I think and feel about that. It's the same way you do. I'm not giving up my guns for shit at this point. And even if something happened and they come around like that, well, I guess we're going to fuck around and find out, right? Because I'm not giving them up. And I think at that point, I would be more violent. But again, I'm not sure exactly what this question is meaning. Like, if we had but listen, folks, let's just go back to the beginning of time, right? We didn't make it out of the first family before we got kicked out of the garden. We didn't make it out of the first family before we had a murder. And guess what that guy did? He have a gun? Nope. Hadn't even been invented. No black powder. He beat the guy's head in with a rock. So that was an unarmed population. I think inherently humans are violent. I think we have the propensity to do wrong. But again, it goes back to, just think of it this way. How hard is it to be good and to do good all the time? Seems to be one of the hardest things you could ever try to do, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But somehow doing things the wrong way or the bad way or the evil way seem to just be so easy. So easy. And so I would submit they're both violent because it's humans are involved, and we were violent long before we ever had guns.
Yeah, so that I agree with that. So there's your historical perspective. Here's your modern day perspective. When you take guns away from law-abiding citizens, only the bad guys have guns. And
That's right.
just look at the murder rate in Australia since they confiscated everybody's guns 30 years ago. So at the end of the day, humans are violent, like Randy said. And if you take away the guns from the good guys, all you do is enable the bad guys. It's that simple. It's not really complicated.
And they're going to be violent. They're going to be violent. And then how are you going to counter that? Being as violent as you can. So I think it's either way. We're just violent, period.
I don't disagree at all, Randy. So we'll be back at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, same time as usual, with a special report. And you'll have to stay tuned to see what that special report is. And then we'll resume our long war series on Monday. On Tuesday, I have Carmen Maria. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the second last name because I know I'll screw it up, but she's running for the House in Texas, Randy. She comes from Venezuela. She's seen what communism does to a country, and she doesn't want to see it happen in America like she saw it happen in Venezuela. Super smart lady. It's going to so Tuesday night's episode is going to be discussing communism in depth.
Wow.
And then we'll resume the long war series on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we have a long war series on religious wars reborn with special guest Jake Lang, and Mike Glover will be with us as well. So that's a week from tonight.
Hey, somebody came out in the last couple of days, and I'm talking about an influential person that's had to do with government also. I can't remember who it was, but they finally came out and said, our biggest mistake is not realizing that we've been in a holy war this whole time. And against what I said, because we don't think it's a holy war, if your enemy does, and that's how they're pursuing it, that's what it is.
100%. Yeah. Well said, Randy. I heard that too. I can't remember exactly who it was, but anyway, other than that, when you support our sponsors, just one last kick at the can here, carnivalt.com, 25-year shelf life, 100% American meat, no mRNA antibiotics or histamines. WasatchWagyu.com. I put links in the live chat. Discount code SD25. Nobody else gets that but you guys from SD. And he's also giving away free hats these days. If you buy over $99, there's a limited number of people who get a Wasatch Wagyu hat. If you don't do a subscription at Carnival, that's okay. Use the code EATMEAT, all one word, get 10% off. And either company, if you buy over $99, forward your receipt to support@survivaldispatch.com if you have an annual Guardians membership. And every time you do that, I'll tack on 30 days for free. Beyond that, our new Guardians server deployed, running flawlessly. We took some serious attacks, some DDoS attacks the past couple weeks, distributed denial of service attacks. And I made some changes under the hood and made some changes to the IDS in front of it, the intrusion detection system. And I've watched upwards of 10, 15,000 bots hitting our server simultaneously and being deflected with zero hiccups to our users. There's about 20 channels over there that are all very specific topics for y'all and members of the survival and prepping community that are also have a Christian, Christian lens that they look at the world through. You get our emergency notifications. So SDN Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System goes to POC Link radios, goes to your email, goes to Substack, goes to our SDN's channel on our new server, goes to our SDN's channel on our Signal. We get it to everybody. Whereas when the Fed's EBC goes down, or EBS, I should say, emergency broadcast system, when it shits the bed, it shits the bed. And that's all there is to it. And here we are, little old survival dispatch, and ours works a whole lot better. I have to assume that something went down for Khalid tonight because I spoke to him not too long before he went live, and I haven't seen him active in the chat at all. So assuming that he either lost internet or power or both, they've been having a fair bit of problems with that, but Khalid will be back soon, which, by the way, before I forget, we have a feature lit up on our Element server for Guardians for webinars, and we are going to start webinars very, very soon. And Cleet is going to be doing some badass webinars Sarah's going to do a badass webinar. This lady, she's like Jerry McCulloch in female form. She took a tray, an ammo tray, okay? And she put it behind a paper target, taped it up, cut a little square hole where 1 9mm round went, and was 20 feet away. First shot, put it through that hole and out the back, and there wasn't a mark anywhere else on the entire target. I mean, it's badass. She's an instructor. She's here in Central Florida as well. You're gonna see
that is impressive.
Oh my God, she's awesome. Like,
and then I'm like everybody else. Okay, do it again. I don't doubt she can.
No, get this one, India. So what'd she do for a follow-up? She took cards from a card deck and turned them this way.
Oh boy, now that's somebody that can shoot right there.
And took them down sideways.
That's somebody that can shoot.
Boy, howdy. Yeah, she's on my team when the shit goes down.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, for our Guardian members, we've built a very secure, very private community for like-minded individuals. The only thing that could happen to us is if Big Brother went to the data center and said, cut the internet connection to that server, they could. We get 3 server images a day sent to 3 different offshore data centers. I could light it back up inside of 3 hours, and it wouldn't even be in the continental US. So we're way, way, way ahead of the curve. There will be some fairly big name influencers / creators that'll have channels on that server, including Mike Glover, Keith Graves, amongst others, JJ Carroll. And that's coming very, very soon as far as their presence is concerned. But $7.99 a month, $79.99 a year. You can't beat it with a stick. That's it. So
well, hold up. Got one alibi. So I just want to say, real quick, love you guys. Thanks for the prayers for my fiance the other night. They're still without power in Nashville. So keep the prayers coming. Y'all prayed for Chris's mom. And then last but not least, happy birthday, Chris. Happy birthday,
you had
brother.
that. No, I'm not celebrating. I'm skipping this shit, man.
Well, you can pretend, but the year went by, buddy. That's
well, and if anybody asks me how old I am, I'm 29 years old, 28 years experience.
That's right.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's right. Me too. I'm going to adopt that.
Right on. So if memory serves me right, because I do the brief and the sit rep early in the morning, I set up the studio. I'm pretty sure the closing video tonight has Uncle Ted in it, Ted Nugent, which means instantly demonetize the video. I don't give a shit because it's worth it. But yeah, that's it. Between now and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless our law enforcement. God bless our troops. God bless America. And enjoy the closing video.